Have you ever wondered what it would take to build a brand new village completely from scratch? Here is the true story of the Bolivian village Nueva, told by those who were part of exactly that.
I grew up in the old colony church here in Reinfeldt.
Alan Fraze, together with his two brothers, are land developers based in Winkler, Manitoba.
We had an opportunity to go to Bolivia back in 2005 and for some business venture, and while we were there, I recall Saturday morning, we were driving down the street and we were thinking about Sunday morning. We wanted to attend a church on Sunday morning. And as we're driving and thinking about this and talking about this, we look to the side, and here on the sidewalk is a friend of ours, Dick Plett from Winkler, walking down the sidewalk. And so, lo and behold, we open the window and we yell at, "Good day, Dick!" And Dick kind of looks around. He says, "What are you guys doing here? Why are we meeting here on this street?" And so we pulled over and started talking and said, "Dick, we want to attend church tomorrow morning. Where do you recommend that we go to church?" And he right away says, "Oh, guys, you got to go to Pilon. There's a great little church that you need to go visit and see." And so the next morning we get up and we drove down, and it was raining hard. And I recall how muddy the roads were. And when we get to church, we walked in, and it was an older, smaller building, and there must have been 50 plus worshipers there that morning. And I so recall the worship team that was leading that morning, and there was this man in the Schlaubecksen and another man in blue jeans, and the same with the ladies. The ladies with one lady with her kerchief and dress, and another one in her blue jeans and t-shirt, and they were leading the singing. We sang 4 different songs, one in English, one in Low German, one in High German, and one in Spanish. And I just recall the power of the Holy Spirit just being present, the joy that these people had, and you could see it in their eyes, how they were just praising God.
These were Mennonites who had left colony life in Bolivia because of hardships from the rigid rural structure, and some of them have even been excommunicated.
He had been excommunicated. He could not buy from the local store. He could not sell his milk. He had no way of income. He couldn't educate his kids because some of the schools there, they do not teach them how to read or write. And what hope is there for their children? After church, saw their Sunday school quarters, and here on the side of this rented building was a small tarped area, and with lots of holes in it, and it was raining hard. And here the children were having Sunday school in the mud because of the dirt floor. And we just said, this is not right. This has to change.
David and Lisa Jansen served in Bolivia from 1998 to 2015.
We went with missionaries to a very conservative colony. Right in the heart of the colony, there was a family who gathered together in the shop with their flashlights, trying to read the Bible and being very paranoid that someone would hear them. I was so touched. I thought, if this family here in the colony is that hungry to learn about God and to feel God's love, how many more would there be? Our beginning was to start outreach to the families who had been outcast from the colony.
I think we were at the first Bible study that David and Lisa had in San Julian. I remember that very clearly. That's where it all started to feel like we needed more from God.
We started with Bible study, which developed into a church. We started, their children needed education, our children needed education, and so we figured, okay, how can we do this? And that's where
with 5 kids.
We had 5 kids in a small little 10 by 8 shack, and so that's where we started school. They wanted to live in a village the way they were accustomed to, but they didn't want to have the rigorous rules that they had to abide by. And so with some help from some other believers, other friends in Saskatchewan, some farmers that came out there to Bolivia once in a while too. We started this vision of a community. And we got to know Daryl and Elaine Kaler. We got to become friends. They were working in Santa Cruz in the Spanish ministry, and we were in Pilon in the countryside in the Low German ministry. And so we just connected with them. We had young kids, they had young kids, and they came from the EMMC conference, we came from the Bergtaler conference, and we just started having these conversations like, why wouldn't, instead of our conference supporting us to do Mennonite work and their conference supporting other people, why wouldn't the conferences work together? And that's kind of where that working together was born.
There are so many needs in the world, right? So many hurting people, so many opportunities that we have to reach people with a message and the love of Christ. And the Low German people would be one of those people groups. It's a sensitive discussion sometimes to talk about reaching the Mennonites, to ask what do they need to be reached for or from, because the colonies function as well. They're communities, so not everything is bad in the colonies. And so I think it's important to have a healthy respect for what is happening, but also be open to what God is calling us to in reaching those that need to be reached with the gospel, maybe in a different way, different context. Those that have been rejected by the church, and on the colony or otherwise.
We come up with this idea of buying a piece of property and helping them establish a community that was their own.
We sat under the thatched roof outside, and we met to hash through what the vision was for the work, where we felt the Lord leading us. And that's where we came up with the 3 E's, which were evangelism, discipleship, education, and economic development. Yeah, having a vision statement, I believe, was very important. It provided us clarity. It provided clarity for us as a team, as a mission team, to know how we were going to work, where we were going to focus our energies so that we were working in alignment even with each other as a team. And then it helped us to know how to work with the local people, in what to communicate to them, how we were working, what our approach was, why we were doing what we were doing, and to get them on board. And then it helped us a lot working with other organizations or colony leaders, where we could simply and unapologetically explain what we were doing.
We had heard that they'd already looked at 2 pieces of land where they could possibly build a new church. And so we drove out to take a look at these 2 pieces that they had looked at. And one was right on the main highway coming out of Santa Cruz to Pilon. And when we saw that piece of land, it right away made sense. You could have commercial development right on the main highway for trucks to have access off of the main highway. And behind that, you could have your school and your church. And behind that was room for housing. And next to that, room for cattle. And at the far end of this property was a river. So you had water for the cattle. We heard that there had been some farmers from north of Saskatoon, that Warman area, that had already raised some funds for exactly this purpose, to buy some land. And so it was a few days later, we flew out with my friend Clarence Leash. I had a small plane, and we flew out to Saskatoon, and we had breakfast with them, and Dick Platt came along as well, and shared with him the story and exactly what was all happening and what we'd seen and the huge need that was out there. And it was neat how the 2 pieces came together, and I think there's people from Lacrete, Alberta that also got involved, and this thing had a life of its own, and the 300 acres were purchased.
One of the long-term goals with education, why we felt it was so important, was that it would have long-term ramifications.
Education was not highly valued in the Mennonite community. They kind of, if you go to school till you're 10 or 12, learn a few basics, that's fine, and then start working, get married, those are all good things as well, but education wasn't a priority.
It was quite a holistic approach, I would say, so we wanted to tap into the intellectual to give them information, but there was a lot of emphasis also on hygiene, on health, physical education, so teaching life skills, teaching respect, learning to relate interculturally, so they had Bolivian national teachers, so developing just healthy respect. The Bible was also one of the key texts that was used, so praying and devotionals and Bible teaching was a key part in that, and so in that way the school also really reinforced what the church was teaching, and with that helping the children to think through why they did what they did and consider different ways, and of course all of that went home too, and kids went home telling their moms about the health lessons that they had learned, and so it introduced a lot of new ideas.
And the school and the teachers became a safe place for these children. A lot of them had to deal with abuse at home, whether it was substance abuse, physical abuse, different things. And so the teachers were a lot more than there just for the academic education, but there to show them the love of Jesus. It was really interesting because both the school and the church, well, the whole community was open to Mennonites, right? And so, and like Daryl said, there was 50 to 60 colonies, and each colony has their own set of rules. And so sometimes mixing all these people from different colonies with different values and different ways of doing life, it could cause a fair bit of conflict in the school, in the church, in the community, because they were used to doing things differently.
A key person there was Arlie Peters, who's a Canadian trained educator, and had a strong vision for it. He had the expertise and the knowledge to carry an institution like the school forward, and I think that was very important.
In the beginning, when the community started, I was in the middle of all the decisions. Any decisions in development, I was involved with all of them. But now, over the years, I started to pull back. And today, the community has its own community board made up of residents that live in the community. The school has a school board. We still have Arlie Peters there as our missionary staff, but the school is almost runs itself, although we still subsidize it for some of its administration cost. The church is in a transition point now where we will slowly be withdrawing from having a full-time pastor there, where they will, I think in the next 3-4 years, that church will be on its own. There will be no missionary involvement there.
Well, there was a lot of learning done through the project, I would say, and certainly in recalling the story, it's not a perfect story. One of the key lessons that I would take from it is how to develop people for the long term, and how to help them to help themselves, how to include local people so that it's not us from North America doing things for them. We wanted to develop a sense of us working together.
I think if we go too fast, if we try to push people too hard to make changes, then sometimes people turn against us.
And even with the church, prior to Nueva, the congregation that was meeting, there was a church split, and it was very painful and very difficult.
I think what happened out of that, by the grace of God, is that 2 congregations formed with different approaches to how they reach the Low German people.
We've always said it's a long-term project, and the education will make the real difference.
What are the odds of us meeting Dick Plett on the side of the road in this town? What are the odds of us, going to this church and seeing this, and then seeing the hand of God and how He brought the people from Saskatchewan that already raised the funds These are all not coincidences, these are divine appointments. I'm grateful for all the people that have been involved. We all need to do what we're called to do. We need to do our little part. And for us, to listen to, Dick tell us to go to this church, to get our brothers in Saskatchewan involved to help pay for the land, to Dave and Lisa Jansen that gave their lives so many years to help build this village, to others. I mean, there's so many more that I'd love to say thank you to, but yeah, I'm not even sure who's involved, and it's not important. It's not about me. It's about us. How can we help our fellow brothers and sisters?
We don't know where the Lord will take it all, but it may just be that it'll be the children of these families that are going to carry it forward and probably do much greater things.